y'all, it's Rachel and welcome to Ghosts and Glitter. My dog is approaching. You may approach. Anyway, the reason that we are here is to do, oh yeah, see? Isn't she cute? The mid-year book freakout tag. It's the middle of the year. It's a little past the middle of the year actually, which is horrifying, but it's the middle of the year. And especially since I started my channel in the middle of the year, I thought this would be a great opportunity for you to see the kind of stuff that I've been reading leading up to the middle of the year, or kind of the highlights and lowlights of my reading year. So with that, here's the mid-year book freakout tag. The best book you've read so far this year. Hands down, the best book I've read so far this year is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I adored this book. It's one of my favorite books of all time. As you can tell, I'm reading it again. I've read it 1.5 times this year. I read it in February, and then I picked it back up and read the first half of it again, because when I finished it, it put me in a slump so bad that I had to restart it to kind of reinvigorate myself for reading. I love the main character, Jade. I adored her. She will be in my mind forever. Yeah, if you don't know, this is about this girl, Jade, who lives in Idaho, and she's obsessed with slasher films. And she gets really excited when she starts seeing things happening in her community that look like the lead up to her own real life slasher. And I know a lot of people didn't like this because it is kind of slow, but for me personally, there was not a dull moment. I could bathe in this book. So this is the best book I've read so far this year, hands down. Best sequel you've read so far. I haven't read a lot of sequels this year. Actually, yeah, there hasn't been a lot of sequel reading this year. So kind of by default, the best sequel I've read this year are Tuesday's Gone and Waiting for Wednesday by Nicci French. These are what are you doing? These are part of the Frieda Klein series, which is about a psychotherapist who kind of gets drawn in to these different murder cases that are happening. And the books are also, like, they're rather slow. It's a very literary mystery where it's not just focused on the mystery, but it's focused on the lives of Frieda and her friends around her, and kind of the inner workings of what's going on in their personal relationships. But the mysteries, I don't know, they always are really enthralling. I'm always really interested to see where it goes. So yeah, even though it's like a slow-paced, very low-key vibe, I don't know, I can't stop reading them, and I'm hopefully going to finish the entire series this year. That'd be pretty cool. So yeah, that's the best sequel I've read so far. New release you haven't read but want to. There's quite a few, but I'm going to just name two, one that I own and one that I do not. The one that I don't own is Siren Queen by Nghi. There is something in my eye. That's probably one of Fern's hairs. Anyway, the Siren Queen by Nghi. I don't know a lot about it. I think it's supposed to be kind of speculative fiction, taking place in like the golden age of Hollywood. And that sounds like I would really like it. So that, and then the one that I do own that I want to get to is And Then I Woke Up by Malcolm Devlin. I don't know a lot about this because, like, on purpose. It says, I'm just going to read the first sentence of the blurb. In a world reeling from an unusual plague, monsters lurk in the streets while terrified survivors arm themselves and roam the countryside in packs. That's all I want to need to know. It's really short and it came out this year. I really want to get to it. I think it's something I can get done in just 1 or 2 sit downs reading it. And I love the cover. The cover intrigues me. And the title, honestly. That's a cool title. So those are the top 2 new releases that I want to get to this month. This month? Nope. That's not going to happen in general. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I have a few, so I'm just going to highlight very briefly what they are. So first off, my most anticipated release for the second half of the year has got to be the next volume of Saga by Brian K. Vaughan. It should be coming out sometime this fall, I think. I don't know if there's a hard and fast release date on that, but I'm all caught up on all the volumes that have been released so far. I think there's 9 of them so far. So volume 10 should be coming out this year. I don't know if I'm emotionally prepared, but I want to know what happens next. So that one. Next up, I have House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. If you don't know, Alexis Henderson is the person who wrote The Year of the Witching, which was one of my favorite books. When did it come out? 2020 or 21? Might have just been last year. Anyway, one of my favorite books that I read. I loved it, and I can't wait to see what she does with House of Hunger. I'm also in love with the cover of House of Hunger. I think it's supposed to be kind of vampire-y? Maybe? Not positive, but super excited. Next up is Leech by, I hope I pronounced this person's name right, but probably not. Hiron Inez? I don't know. The cover, once again, is super cool. Love the title, and I've heard it described as gothic science fiction, which I don't know if I can think of something that I've read that has been blurbed like that, and that just sounds fascinating, and I hope it's good because it sounds really cool. And then finally, I'm super excited for The Daughter of Dr. Moreau to come out by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I have only read, I think, 2 of her books. I've read Mexican Gothic, of course, like everyone, and Untamed Shore, which I kind of liked more than Mexican Gothic, if I'm honest. Untamed Shore was a kind of a noir set in the 1970s, and I don't know, everything that she writes is so different from the last thing that she wrote, and I just think she's a fascinating author to follow because I feel like there's something of hers for everyone out there. So even if you didn't vibe with one of her books, you're going to love something else that she comes out with. So far, I've enjoyed both of the books that I've read by her so far, and I'm really excited for The Daughter of Dr. Moreau to come out. So those are my most anticipated releases for the second half of the year. Next question is biggest disappointments. Yeah, I'm going to list 3 here. And disappointment doesn't really mean that I didn't enjoy it to some degree, but it wasn't all that I was expecting it to be. So first up is Migrations by Charlotte McConaughey. I'm so bad at this. So Migrations, very briefly, is a book about kind of climate crisis oriented, where due to the climate and what we've done to the climate, wildlife is pretty much non-existent. Specifically, there's hardly any birds left in the world. And we're following this woman scientist, kind of, who is following the last great migration, I think of Arctic terns or some sort of neat bird like that. And while this was good, and I ended up giving it 3.75 stars, rounded up to a 4 on Goodreads, I think, I was really disappointed that there wasn't more of an exploration of what it means for the environment when wildlife starts disappearing, when there's hardly any animals in existence. Ultimately, this was just an exploration of this woman and her life, and that's fine. But I was really hoping with this really cool climate setup that we would get more of an exploration of what life looks like, what we're missing out on with, birds basically gone. And it really didn't explore that to the extent that I wanted it to. And maybe that's on me, but yeah, it was good. It was a good read. I read the audiobook. It was fine, I guess. Next up is The Plot by Jean Hanff Korelitz. I had heard so many good things about this. I had heard like, it's not like your typical popcorn thriller. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's not like, it's got some depth to it. It's more literary. And I was like super excited about that. And it was kind of boring. I really didn't like our main character. Not that I have to enjoy a book, but I just didn't like his perspective just in general. And yeah, I was kind of bored. And the twist at the end, I was just kind of like, yeah, and? I don't know. It was kind of underwhelming to me. And then last biggest disappointment was The Maid by Nita Prose. It was marketed as kind of this Agatha Christie-esque locked room mystery. And I was like, ooh, a hotel, like a maid finds someone murdered in a hotel. Like that just sounds like such a fun setup. And it was just, ugh. Anyway, those were my 3 biggest disappointments of the year. Biggest surprise, my biggest surprise this year was Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. I loved this book. I've never read anything until Fingersmith by this author before, and I had heard like good things, but I didn't really know what to expect. I knew this was historical fiction, kind of Dickensian, taking place in London in the 1800s, 1862, and that it was sapphic, and that was kind of all I knew. And from the first just page, I was just gripped by this, and I was like, oh, this is good. And this had so many twists and turns in it, and the characters were so fleshed out, like they felt so real to me. Biggest surprise was definitely Fingersmith. Also, I was surprised at how long it was because I wasn't expecting, it looks thick, but I also wasn't expecting an almost 600-page book when I read it. So that's beside the point. Yes. Favorite new author. I wouldn't necessarily call these authors favorites because I've only read 1 book by them so far, but these are authors that I'm definitely going to pick up their backlist if they have any, and definitely keep an eye on what they're coming out with in the future. So first favorite new author is Hailey Piper. I've only read 1 book by her so far, but I want to read them all because all of her stuff is like fairly short and compact, and I really vibe with her writing style, and I want to see all the different ideas that she has. I just want to dive into all of her stuff. Next up is Amber McBride. Amber McBride. I read Moth Me? Anyway, I read Moth earlier this year and I loved it. I don't read a ton of YA, but that was good. It was beautiful. It was lyrical. It was written in a poetry format. And it was so beautiful. And the cover is so beautiful. And I'm going to pick up her next book. I think that was her debut. And then Sarah Waters, who wrote Fingersmith. I want to read her backlist because I kind of am still obsessed with Fingersmith, even though I read it in March, I want to say. Those are my new favorite authors that I want to keep an eye on. Newest fictional crush. I feel like this works better for people that read a ton of epic fantasy and romance. And I haven't read a ton of epic fantasy and romance this year. So I'm just going to go with Jade because I'm obsessed with her. And Jade from My Heart is a Chainsaw. Which leads me into newest favorite character. Also Jade from My Heart is a Chainsaw. Also Sue and Maud from Fingersmith. I'm obsessed with them. I'm obsessed with all the morally grayness in this book. The trickery and the Sue and Maud, they were so real to me. And so they are some of my new favorite characters. Book that made you cry. I have 3. The one that made me weep for the entirety of reading it was Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman. And I knew that was going to happen because I don't think anyone on the earth has read it without crying at least a small tear. And yeah, no, my eyes were blurry the entire time I was reading it. So that one. Also, I read Britt Marie Was Here, also by Frederick Bachman, and that one made me tear up some too, a little bit out of happiness and a little bit out of sadness. And then also the ending of My Heart is a Chainsaw. I cried. So those are the books that made me cry. The books that made me happy, I don't read a ton of like happy things. Usually by this time of the year, I will have read more romance. So I don't know. I really haven't read any romance this year, but usually a good romance makes me happy. But Britt Marie Was Here did make me very happy. I smiled a lot while I was reading that book. It's just really cute, cozy, the perfect book to break up my romps on the dark side, I guess. So yes, the most beautiful book you've bought or received this year. So I have a couple. Well, three. I have three. One of these I did not get this year, but the one that I did get this year is a sequel, so I just thought I would hold them up, both up. But that is Sleeping Giants and Waking Gods. This is the one I received this year by Sylvan Newell. Newell? Anyway, I just think these covers are intriguing and beautiful. I love the cover, the colors. Yeah, I just think like the mechanics on them, they're simple. I like the font. Yeah, they're just really pretty. So those, and then this is a new release actually, but it's When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. I think this cover is just absolutely gorgeous. Got a little dragon eye in the corner. I love the florals. I love the green and purple. Yeah, I don't think that's very interesting. Yeah, it's just a purple cover under the dust jacket, but I just think this is gorgeous. All the other books I've gotten this year have been thrifted and are kind of beat up. So those are the most beautiful books. What books do you want to read by the end of the year? I'll tell you a few. Most of the ones I'm going to talk about are ones that I physically own. I pulled them off of my book cart. I looked at my book cart and I said, what are the ones on my book cart that I most desperately want to get to by the end of the year? First up, we have The Dead Zone by Stephen King. I'm trying to make my way through Stephen King's entire backlist from beginning to end, like in order. So Dead Zone is next up, and I'm really intrigued by this. It's, you know what, I'm not even going to talk what it's about. But yes, Dead Zone is one that I want to get to by the end of the year. Hopefully more Stephen King's than that, but I am not doing well on my read through. Next up is A Middle Grade, A Soft Place to Land by Janae Marks. I read her, I think it was her debut, at least her debut middle grade, From the Desk of Zoe Washington. I read that last year, I want to say, and I loved it. It was so sweet, and I immediately wanted to grab the next thing that she came out with. Don't know what this is about, but it's a middle grade. I should be able to get to it by the end of the year. If not, I need help. Next is Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. I'm also going through her backlist, kind of like the way I am with Stephen King from beginning to end. This is a lot less intimidating than Stephen King's backlist, though. If you haven't read anything by her, she is a fantastic YA historical fiction author. She touches on the points in history that don't really get taught or talked about. And I've read Out of the Easy by her, and I've also read Between Shades of Grey, which is not here. But anyway, I'm really excited to get to this. This is a lot of people's favorite of hers. I've got to get this. I've got to get to this by the end of the year, or so help me. Ooh, it's got hair on it. Finally, for a horror book that I want to get to by the end of the year, The Last House on Needless Street. This was talked a lot about last year and at the beginning of this year. And I haven't read anything by this author, Katrina. I don't know, Catriona Ward. I haven't read anything by her, but she is another author that I'm fascinated by and have decided that I want to read everything they come out with. So she's come out with Sundial, which has been kind of getting mixed reviews, and also Little Eve is coming out this year, which I have my eye on. But before I get to any of that, I would like to read this. Also buttery cover. I love a buttery cover. Also the colors, it's nice. So, oh, and finally, one other book I want to get to by the end of the year. I don't own it. I've been getting these from the library. The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. It's the third book in the Poppy War trilogy, which I started 2 years ago and then restarted last year. So I want to get to this final book. I think it's going to be epic, and that is why I've been putting it off, because I am scared. And I also don't want it to end. I want to be in this world for longer, but yeah, I want to get to the Burning God. And that does it for the mid-year book freakout tag. I really hope at the end of the year, I'm gonna go back to this video and make sure that I've read everything that I said I really wanted to read, everything that I'm so excited to get to. But yeah, I hope y'all are having a great day and a great week, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.